Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Today, we're talking about the big potential losers from the big NAR commission lawsuit settlement. Hey, Grant and Houston here. Here we talk about all the great things about the city of Houston, all things real estate, and all things market related. As the team lead of Rothberg Realty Group, we've been watching this commission suit for a while, and this $418 million settlement between the National Association of Realtors and the plaintiffs is a potential game changer. So in the previous video, we covered who are the big winners. So if you haven't seen that one, go ahead and hit subscribe and go back and check that out. But today we're going to cover who are the big potential losers from this settlement, assuming it's going to be approved. When I first saw this lawsuit filed in 2019, my first thought as a real estate agent was good. I mean, honestly, there are so many license holders in the world of real estate that, like any industry this large, you just can't help but come across some folks who aren't the best at what they do. And that's one of the hardest things for us every day as one of the leading real estate teams is just, we don't know who we're going to deal with on the other side of a transaction. And to be clear, like in anywhere, there are some folks we interact with who maybe they're unethical or they're just unprofessional. You know, they don't have the skills they need. They're uninformed or they're just unaware of the way we're supposed to work in business. And I've seen some large agents communicate things to the public like, if you hire me as your buyer's agent, it's free to use me. And that's never been true. That's not in our documents. If you saw in the previous video where we talked about the winners, our documents here in Texas have always clearly disclosed, here's what it costs to use your real estate agent and your real estate broker. And if you're a seller, here's what it costs to use me. And do you want me to share some of that money with someone on the other side? That's always been very obvious and transparent here. But I have seen some agents say things on social media like, go ahead and call me because it's free to use me. And that's not good. It's not true. It's misleading to the public. And I think the plaintiffs' attorneys were right about this point, that there are cases in some states and unique situations where someone just doesn't communicate clearly, either because of a lack of skill or maybe because of deception, what it actually costs to use a real estate agent. I'm personally glad that we're going to see the industry hopefully get cleaned up a little bit. It's not been terrible, but if there's one case where someone's misled or miscommunicated with, that's one case too many, and hopefully those will start to go away. Our second big loser, and this is where these start to hurt a little bit, is just trust in general. Now, one of the things that I saw right away in these lawsuits is the way the media has reported them is just super misleading and confusing. We've interacted with our sellers who will ask us like, well, we're not supposed to pay anything to the buyer's side anymore, right? Or isn't that illegal now? And these are all pending litigation. These have all been pending cases, but the way the media has reported them has just confused people about what the real state of play is right now. And that's not good. So there's going to be some problems now with just discerning what is true and what's been decided and settled on. On the positive side, as we do see some potential changes to the way real estate happens in America, there'll be some really cool innovation. Again, we talked about that on that last video, but that innovation is going to produce a lot of noise. And I don't know if you're like me, but my mailbox already has a bunch of stuff in it. I already get stuff in the mail, I already get email, I already get phone calls. There's a lot of stuff for me to filter through to decide what's true and what's not true. And unfortunately, you're probably going to want to expect to see a lot more of that come through on the real estate front. There'll be a lot of shiny objects, a lot of cheap new ideas, some of which are going to be awesome, but it's going to take a little bit more work as a consumer to figure out what's real and what should I do. So if you have questions about that stuff, this is where you really want to lean into that relationship you have with a real estate advisor to ask, like, honestly, man, tell me, is this thing legitimate? What do you think about this? And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is if you've got a great real estate agent in your corner, they're going to tell you the truth about these things. Folks have built this mistrust, and I think these lawsuits kind of feed into this, that every real estate agent is out there and they're just like bloodsuckers trying to exploit people and make whatever money they can. But man, like, go ask our clients. I mean, go ask the past clients of a really good agent, and those folks know that agent put me and my needs first. They were there for me at all hours of the night. They answered my questions. They sacrificed in order to make this happen. They spent time patiently explaining to me. And lean on those people now. As you have these questions, these things come through, don't be afraid to ask them, is this legitimate and what should I do about this? I think another potential loser from this, ironically, is going to be sellers. Whereas on the one hand, we talked about how it's a really cool benefit for a seller to know that a buyer who is represented by a real estate agent agent is now going to be fully vetted. They're going to be someone who has had to go through the process and sign an agreement with them. That's really cool to see. But the downside is, if we begin to see this continued decoupling of commissions coming from the equity of a home, where now it's something that's paid for directly out of pocket by a buyer, you'll probably begin to see more buyers who just choose not to pay for someone to help them. And some folks are going to be really savvy and have no problem with that. That's going to be great. Good for them. But what our experience has been is, in the world of real estate, is something like 80% of all lawsuits in Texas involve at least one unrepresented party. And that's because folks who don't do this every day is something we call actually the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's one of these cool little psychological principles that when we learn a little bit about something, our confidence goes through the roof. But actually, our confidence way outstrips our competency. And we see that happen with real estate, where someone may have sold a home once, or they knew someone who did, or they think that they can go through and go show a home on their own, and they can negotiate the contract on their own, and maybe they can. But there's going to be a lot of folks interacting on these transactions who just don't know the documents, they don't know the required disclosures, they don't know the steps to go through that process, and it's going to create some headaches for those sellers who interact with a buyer like that. Another issue is, we serve as a sounding board as a real estate agent for our clients all the time, and just helping them know what to expect and what's going on with the market. You know, for example, if I went through a house 2-3 years ago when things were red hot and someone said, my parents got $5,000 in concessions from the seller, so I want that too. But we're dealing with a world where we're getting multiple offers on properties. Part of our job as an agent is to help someone know what's realistic, what's normal, what should you be expecting to see happen on a transaction like this. I think there's going to be some risk that we're going to see some folks who have a lot of confidence that they can do this on their own, and it's going to create a lot of headaches for sellers who are trying to get rid of their house in a smooth, pain-free way. The last group, and this one, I think this is the biggest potential buyer that really should concern us nationally. And the fact that's not been talked about throughout this is, I think, just a total travesty. I mean, the media should be ashamed of themselves. Our public policy advocates should be ashamed, because this is first-time buyers and historically unrepresented home buying groups. That's folks who are, age-wise, they own a small portion of homes, are less likely to own a house, racial minorities, financial, low economic status. Those folks typically aren't able to afford out of pocket to pay for professional advice. So it's one thing for us all to say, oh yeah, it'll be great, just have, pay for your agent if you want one. But what if you're just kind of barely scrapping things together and you're trying to save up enough money to do a down payment on a house? And now you can't afford to pay for a professional to guide you through the process. You're going to be at the mercy of that listing broker. You're going to be at the mercy of what you read online, and you won't have someone to coach you and guide you through that whole process. For our first-time buyers, this is what people don't understand. We've got clients that I've worked with for 5, 6, 7 years. People have been living in apartments or paying off credit card debt, or maybe they're just scared of home ownership and they need some encouragement. For years, we spend time coaching them and training them and walking them through how to get a budget put in place, how to get prepared, and finally the point where they buy that first home is a special moment. But I gotta be honest with you, if some of these first-time buyers or some of these underrepresented groups have to pay for a real estate agent out of pocket, they wouldn't be able to afford me, and they wouldn't be able to afford other really highly skilled real estate agents. So I think it's very easy for us to talk about how the cost of commissions is relatively high in the United States compared to other countries. We also have to talk about how the rate of home ownership in the United States, especially if we include high expense areas like California or New York, the rate of home ownership in the United States is extremely high compared to those same countries that we say are very cheap on their commission rates. So maybe we pay a little bit more for real estate agents at some point along the way in the US, but the result is millions more Americans are homeowners now. They now have a slice of the American dream. In fact, I was just looking at this. If you compare home ownership rates in the United States to what you see in Europe and some of the more common European countries like Germany or the United Kingdom, which have, in news stories, they'll talk about how they have cheaper commission rates. If we had the same rate of home ownership as they did, you need to be prepared to have 35 to 40 million Americans living in apartments. You need to be prepared to have 35 to 40 million Americans renting a house for the rest of their life. It's a big, big deal that no one's really talking about. Those folks who are underrepresented or first-time home buyers, we're probably going to need to see some pretty interesting innovation come in, or maybe some changes to lending rules to allow them to be able to hire professional help. It's very important for them to be able to get a piece of that American dream. And honestly, this whole lawsuit has some undertones of classism that have been really underreported and have a big potential impact on the community. Here in Greater Houston, we're proud to be the most diverse city in the entire United States of America. It's incredible. And the sad truth is there are going to be folks who are trying to buy their first home or trying to learn, the basics of finance to be prepared to buy a house, who are going to struggle to be able to afford the high-class professional advice that they need. So I hope there's going to be some innovative solutions, and I know on our team we still care about everyone. We want to make sure we do a great job for everyone. So this is one of those big potential losers that I think we got to talk about more often. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this, and this stuff's developing as time goes by. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you leave a comment below on what you think some of the potential consequences can be for this. Maybe you think this is overall a net positive, the settlement. I'm totally cool with that. But leave a comment for me here. And as always, if you have any questions or anything we can help with, just shoot me a message here. Our information is below, and we're here ready to help.